Hey, what's up everybody? Bdf coming at you with another video. Alright, I want to take a couple seconds to talk about something that I had seen on the internet a few weeks ago. Not a few weeks ago, maybe about earlier in the week, maybe 10 days ago, something like that, somewhere in that time frame. There was the person who was imprisoned as a minor, meaning released late, very recently, for the killing of New York rap superstar Pop Smoke. I sat down and I watched the entire interview. No Jumper put that interview up, and got a lot of flack for it, and rightfully so, because in a nutshell, this young man is not promoting anything at all. He's not trying to change his life necessarily. He's not coming up here as an artist, anything like that necessarily. He's just coming there because of what it is that he was put in jail for doing. He never actually confirmed he was the trigger man, but he also never denied it, and some of the things that he alluded to kind of put two and two together for me to believe that he probably is the trigger man in the situation. Young fella, like I said, a juvenile in the situation. They released him, they gave him juvenile life, which means he was released at, like, I think 20, something like that. It's only been like 3 years since this happened. Pop Smoke was a big time New York artist who had kind of revolutionized drill music, had a strong street following in New York. His voice was one of a kind, and I really learned to appreciate his style personally. As somebody who did playlists, I did 2 playlists with his music on it, and he's definitely missed by those who appreciated his music. But at the end of the day, he too glorified murder and killing, and, you know, claimed a set and all of that. He was in the streets himself, so, you know, that's just for context in regards to who this happened to. But at the end of the day, from what I understand, it was no hit, it was no politics involved in this. He was out here in Hollywood, and it was a home invasion. Anybody could have been in that household, could have been anybody. It happened to be him. And you know, it's been said that, you know, the kid in the interview, as I watched an hour and 20 minutes or whatever how long the interview was in its entirety, the kid was alluding to essentially he didn't actually intend to do this. The way that he kind of alluded to it was just basically too much movement. That's what he kept on saying, too much movement, too much movement. In other words, Pop Smoke probably reached for something, or, you know, the kid just was a little nervous with all the movement that was going on, and he pulled the trigger. That's what I took from it. The thing about this kid is, what I come to understand is that he seems to be raised by people who shun apologizing or saying sorry for anything, but he wanted to word it in such a way to express his remorse for it going down this way, still posturing himself with the understanding that he has a target on his back from multiple areas based on his affiliations away from the situation and within the situation. And what people have to understand about kids in these situations is that they don't really protect themselves from being a target because they're already a target. So they don't differentiate the powers of and the effective nature of someone wanting to kill them because of something that was done publicly, rather than somebody down the street who probably want to gun them down just for their set. So when you understand that, the posturing of not wanting to say sorry or expose any weakness or show any weakness has more to do with their posturing in the streets and less to do with this situation. And that's what I was kind of reading into. Having been from LA, you understand what he represents, who he represents. Not necessarily specifics of his hood, but just the in general representation of what it means to be from a set in these wars out here in Los Angeles. All saying all that sorry and all that, you fooled when you do that. And that's the school he comes from. So what he wanted to express to all of us, and I don't think a good majority of people took from it what I did, what I think he was trying to express to all of us is that he was deeply remorseful. Not just remorseful, but deeply remorseful for what transpired there. But his responsibility to his set, his responsibility to his own safety and to his image, is the best he knows how to do is tell you he wish he didn't do it. But that he's sorry for it ain't gonna happen. And he was expressing to us in a childlike way that this is the only thing he know how to do. He a jacker. He was high when the situation happened, off of something that he had popped, and They was on a regular situational home invasion, probably run of the mill for where he's from and what they do. And this particular situation just so happened to be a young dude he thought was a model. He didn't even know Pop Smoke was. He said he thought Pop Smoke was a model. Man, it was just too much movement. So for me, it's just like, yo, I read into this kid totally differently. First of all, I don't hold No Jumper to the highest of standards as it pertains to morality. I've talked to you guys on this channel numerous of times about No Jumper and the toxicity of what it is that their platform ultimately represents a good portion of the time. It's toxicity, man. The exploitation of gang culture in America, in general, but in Los Angeles, and sometimes Chicago, is really ridiculous. And Adam 22, the games that he plays, to me seems as if that man has some type of death wish and would like nothing more than somebody to do something to him on camera so he can go down with that being his story. I think he plays with death every day with the type of stuff that he deals with and the type of situations that he puts himself into on his channel for content. It's nothing short of suicide to me, what he's committing right in front of all of us. And it's amazing he's lasted this long. I truly believe that, and I've said it many times. I also think, on the other hand, he's given a lot of opportunities to a lot of people to make a lot of money. Some of the most dominant content on the internet coming from this area is stemming from branches that come off of his tree. Guys have gone on to make big money off of branches from his No Jumper tree. They went on to do their own thing and they're successful. We're seeing it. So those opportunities, I think, are worth it for a lot of people, which has probably kept him alive in what he's doing. It's the opportunities he's providing and how successful people have become trolling on his channel and interviewing on his channel and doing all types of other stuff. So I do think that he has a great deal of friends out here at this point. But all in all, this particular bit of content left him getting a little more hate for it than usual, just because of how appreciated Pop Smoke is and just how ridiculous it is to interview a person for killing somebody. Some may look at someone like myself and say, why are you even bringing light to this? But it's because I took from it something that I think most of the internet's not, and that is the ultimate ridiculousness of it all, that this young man is getting on this stage surrounded by grown people who understand the magnitude of what he did and understand the magnitude of what's coming up against him. I understand that, and I think I understood him a little better than I think most people who I've seen commentate on this situation did. He, to me, and I'm in the extreme minority, appeared to be very remorseful for what took place. Very. And like I said, he was raised by people who probably beat the hell out of him for saying sorry for something like that. That's what it seemed like to me. That he would be utterly shunned in his surroundings, probably by people he's most close to, for showing any weakness in this situation based on the posturing of what they got to do to survive, or what they believe is necessary to survive, based on the ignorance of what it is that they're ultimately involved in. It's ignorance. It was ignorance that led them into that circumstance. It's ignorance that ultimately put them in a position to be interviewed. It's ignorance. Not seeing no other way out, as we talked about many times, people desperate, feeling like there's no use in being a good person. That type of energy is what fueled this type of intention that ultimately led him to anybody's house to kill it or rob anybody. And that ignorance is what he showed. But deeper than that ignorance was an intention to grow. A guy who wants to grow up, who doesn't feel like he probably has an opportunity to, based on what it is that he's ultimately done, and also everything else that's probably going on in his life that we won't know about. But someone who knows himself to be damned, but isn't exactly unapologetic for his actions that led to the death of Pop Smoke. but he gonna keep on standing firm on what he believes postures him strong, because he dare not let down the people around him who would otherwise hold him accountable for it, and to the consequences that may come from being weak in his environment. That's what I took from that young man. Just like every other young person who needs to grow away from what they've been brainwashed into believing about how the world works and what the world would expect and respect within them. That's what I see there. A young man who needs to get the hell out of the place he's from, so go somewhere else, see how people are treated in a different way, so that he can come back around and say what I was taught was not good at all, and I need to unlearn it. And I don't think he's going to get that opportunity, because the moment the streets get a hold of him, they're going to let him have it. And we all know that. And so that's the unfortunate nature of this. There was a situation where they then interviewed Pop Smoke's mom thereafter. Whoever they, not No Jumper, a different platform entirely, interviewed Pop Smoke's mom. And she, out of context, I didn't see the entire interview, nor did I look to it at this point. I have yet to see it, but it was an excerpt saying that she was telling that young man his life was over. And then he responded on Twitter, "No, my life ain't over." And a lot of people are essentially saying that he shouldn't be responding to her at all, and all this and that and the third. And I just felt like that was a little more of the posturing of the same posturing. The young man is not in a position where he would be praised around him for being weak or displaying what they would deem weakness. And him saying sorry to her is the same as saying sorry to anybody else for any damn thing. He can't do it. And so it's just a wickedness that raised this young man, ultimately. A wickedness, paranoia, that would put him in a position to even believe that it's necessary to behave this way, to receive respect and to be safe. It's a lie. That is not how you get your respect. That is not how people are going to look at you and think highly of you. If you end up martyred or dead, people are not going to respect you for what it is he thinks he'd be respected for at all. That's the problem. I don't think what I'm saying, I guess, is there's a difference between people who are inherently evil and unapologetic and people who've been raised and brainwashed into behaving as if they are when that ain't really what they feel. This is who that is. That's exactly who that is. He is walking in doctrine, just like many Americans and many people all over this world in many different ways. Just a product of what it is they've been taught. Not independent thought, just carbon copies of someone else's dream of what it is to be strong. And ultimately where that leads them. You know what I mean? Literally. So I feel sad for that young man. I definitely feel sad for Pop Smoke's mother. Obviously Pop Smoke. None of these people deserve to be in this space that they're in. Even that young man who pulled the trigger allegedly doesn't, in my opinion, deserve to be led down the road that ultimately he's now on. Ignorance further put him in a position when he has all this against him to get on TV for $5,000 and speak about the murder that people likely want to kill him for. But like I said, when you got people down the street that want to shoot your head off, what's the difference with somebody across the country that wants to shoot your head off? It ain't no different. You understand what I'm saying? It's not like this is the only thing that he has coming up against him every day. And that's the reality and context that I think needs to be understood about a lot of kids that are getting interviewed on these platforms and get involved in these beefs that are high profile. Fam, that's not the only beef they in. That's not the only person that wants them dead. It's probably not the only situation they've been in that led the same way. Just one of several circumstances that they got to look over their shoulder in regards to. So it's like, this is the one you know about. So no, they ain't no more afraid of Pop Smoke's people coming back getting them than they are the last dudes and that ex dude. You know what I'm saying? It's all the same world to them, where they got to look over their shoulders, have it locked and loaded, and ultimately be ready for what comes with it. So when you consider that's the world he's in, he gonna posture however he can to be strong, to be seen strong, and he's not really learning what he needs to learn from the adults around him because they're too busy trying to capitalize off of the mistake he made. Yeah, I didn't I didn't see a whole lot of instilling wisdom in this young man based on what I saw for an hour and 30 minutes. I didn't see anybody try to challenge any of his thinking, try to tell him that maybe there's another way to go, or none of that. And I think that's the problem with, or the disconnect that I feel I have with some of these platforms on the internet. They don't really provide constructive help for people that they ultimately look to exploit. So they become somewhat of either a nuisance or just a neutral party that allow for ignorance to continue and flow through their doorways. And I'm just not like that. I don't think that's very helpful to the world we're in. You let an ignorant person come into your face, stay ignorant, and leave out of it just as ignorant as they were when they came in. If you're not giving them anything constructive to use that will elevate their lives, then you are a nuisance in their lives. You're a nuisance to the people you're displaying them to as well, because you're further reinforcing the ignorance without any pushback to that. So they're going to be individuals who watch him just like he watched other ignorant individuals and proceed to mimic no different than he has. So it's not helpful, and that's what I would say to all the people who are on No Jumper. Like, how much of this is helpful for the world that you are trying to continue to be in? How much are you just getting your own bag? And what separates you from somebody that is no good who's doing the same thing? And if the answer is nothing, then you do understand that we're going to look at you like we look at them. That's what I would say to all the people on No Jumper and these various different platforms. If you're not looking to provide anything of substance to offset the ignorance and the violence, then you are more or less just like everybody else who's like that. In other situations, other cultures that ain't got nothing to do with you. You just like them who ain't no good. And so that's what I would say, man. Adam 22 is not a black person. We talk about, guys like that. Vlad TV, he's also somebody who kind of looks to exploit this ignorant culture that is violence in the black community. And then we want to get on their case for not being constructive and being helpful and all of that. But at the end of the day, that's not really their role, unfortunately. That's our role as African Americans, to care for our people and to care for ourselves in such a way that doesn't allow for ignorance to flow through our doors and out our doors without some pushback, some seed planting of there could be better, there is another way. Saying that you're sorry for doing something you didn't mean to do is not weak. If anything, it takes strength to posture that way. It's easy to put on a mask and say I don't care, but then say I wish I didn't do it in that same breath. That's a very easy thing to do. Those who taught you that weren't strong. They were masking their weakness with something that, if you're just a little intelligent, you can bleed through and see through, rather. And so that's what I would tell that young man, like, bro, I can clearly see you're sorry. Many can't, because they can't read energy very well, and I guess that's the point of the mask you're wearing. But real people can tell that you didn't mean to do that. Real people can tell that even if you did mean to do it in the moment, you certainly don't appreciate that you did it now. You don't like what came of it. You want to live your life. You want to elevate out of this. You want to be a rich guy. You want to have a family of your own. You don't want to die at 23 for something that you did when you were 17. You understand what I'm saying? That's what needed to be said to that young man. And the people who led you down this path believing that they need to posture the way you postured, how many of them survived? Many didn't. How many people who were like that actually made it? They didn't. If you want to survive, you want to make it in this world, you got to do things that they didn't do, so you don't end up like them, not doing the things that they did. They were not cool. They didn't contribute to no change, no help, nothing. They came and went. They're bones now in a lot of cases. They're locked away forever. They ain't never getting out. You had an opportunity to get out because of when you did this and because of the warped nature of the environment you're in this country that allow you to shoot somebody at 17 years old and get out at 21. Do you know how lucky you are? If anything, you should be in another country somewhere educating yourself. You shouldn't be nowhere near No Jumpers. You shouldn't be nowhere near any of this. You should be taking the little money that you're able to make and finding a life somewhere where nobody knows who the hell you are. And turning your life around with the opportunity you have and starting a family and moving on and teaching them the very opposite of the stuff that you're doing. That's all you need to be told right now. That's all that young man needs to be hearing right now. That there's another way and it's his responsibility to find it. And a man like Adam, 22, 43, 44 years old, knows that. But he could give two craps about that young man, just like he could give two craps about anybody around him, unfortunately. And that's the problem. Just because someone provides you an opportunity to see your dreams does not mean that they are intending to see your dreams. And the vanity and the ambition of our people needs to grow up to understand that. Just because he put you in a position to eat off of his tree does not mean his tree is rooted in the foundation of us growing. It's not. He's exploiting back people and he's putting the money back in his pocket, bro. That's all it is. And that needs to be understood by each and every one of y'all. And if you're not going to get off from his tree and do what it is that he didn't do in a way that it can basically instill some goodness in the people that you're speaking to, instill some responsibility and some spirit into what it is that you're doing, rather than just continuing to do things for views, you are a nuisance in the grand scheme of things. A nuisance. You provide no substance whatsoever. You are a nuisance. It needs to be understood and believed. And time will make it so that that will be true. A lot of people love what you do right now. You ain't gonna have no views tomorrow. They're not gonna look back on none of this content. It's crap. And you know it. Interviewing this young man is seen universally as something that probably shouldn't have been done. But I'm actually glad they interviewed this man, because I took something from it that I think most haven't, but will later on. And that is that this young man, for all his posturing, for all of the things that came out of his mouth, you look behind his eyes in his spirit, that's a scared young man, sad young man, remorseful young man, who is not strong enough for the mind as of yet, and strong enough for the spirit as of yet to step out from behind the indoctrination of his environment to speak on what it is he's actually feeling. He's a weak young man, which is why he did whatever it is that may have transpired that ultimately led to him being incarcerated, because he wasn't strong. He didn't have strength instilled in him, and he didn't have it naturally. You can paint him out to be the worst person in the world. That's not the reality of that. That was somebody misled. Now on a path that ultimately turned him into someone guilty, and now whatever comes with that is on his head. Period. I think if I could say anything to Pop Smoke's mother, I would say, if you are able, watch that entire interview. If you are not able, nobody would blame you. Absolutely nobody would blame you. But in order to understand what I think would be most helpful for her to understand about this young man, is not going to be coming from people who are commenting about what he was doing. A lot of those people, they don't read energy very well. They're instigating to see him crash out and see him disrespect you to further fall to his end. That's what they want. They want to have you reach out hatred toward him that probably comes very naturally based on what it is that transpired. They're not interested in telling you that this kid was remorseful. They're interested in getting a soundbite out of you that ultimately condemns his life. It's a bunch of instigators out here in this internet. That's what also I wanted to say. He didn't listen to the interview of Pop Smoke's mom, so when it sounds like she may be sending a threat to him when she says his life is over, that's not the context in which she said it. That's not what she meant. I saw enough of that to know that's not what she meant. But they'll take that little excerpt out like she's sending goons at him. And then they put out there that he said that he wasn't sorry for what he did. And they'll take that excerpt and put that out there without actually seeing the context where he's actually saying, man, if I could go back in time, I would not have done that. I would have changed some things. I wish it didn't happen. Everything but I'm sorry. Because he can't say that. but will show every bit of sheepish remorsefulness that I can detect very easily there. Very easily. It's disturbing to me, the instigative nature of the internet when it comes to stuff like this. When it's life or death, people will toy around with stuff like this. Toy around with it for their own views. They are demons, demonic entities that need to be not on platforms that allow people to actually be influenced by what it is they're about. Sending people in directions that are no good for them, no different than the direction this kid was sent down. People incapable of thinking for themselves, just do what everybody else taught them how to do. This is how we do, this is how we do. Look at what happened to them. Tell me if that actually works out for you. And it didn't even work out for them in a lot of these cases. We need independent, creative minds, man, who actually care about humanity, who actually understand the context of these circumstances, which is a very rare thing. It's rare. People have two of those, but not all three, that kind of thing. It's rare. You got substance, but you have no understanding of the minds. You don't read energy very well, so you hear this kid say he's not sorry and think he's a demon, think he's a devil. He did a devilish deed, but that is a child. And if you sit there for an hour and a half with your thinking cap on and listen to what he has to say, you'll realize it's a young man. Any child in his environment likely would have did the same thing he did if they were led the way he was led. He ain't special in that way. He ain't some especially devious mind. This is just a regular kid who's been led by some very, very messed up people who probably misled themselves. It's literally what I took from that young man. He got a heart like everybody else. Like a lot of people do, rather. Not everybody. I'm willing to bet the more devious minds were the people that are interviewing him than him. If I'm being real. And it's sad because Pop Smoke died to the hands of someone like this who didn't really mean him no harm despite having all the different circumstances in his streets that he had going on. People were probably very happy to see him pass. People who were very sad and ready to ride to see him pass. He didn't die for nothing real, man. He died because this kid had been misled into being in the circumstance, trying to come up in these circumstances just like many others in this area. It's a home invasion, an LA home invasion. Surprise. And make this be a lesson for all of us. If you're being robbed, don't make no sudden movements. Move fast if they tell you to reach in your pockets. Otherwise, keep your hands where they can see them. And don't do too much. It could be the difference between them pulling the trigger and not, I promise you. It sounds to me that Pop Smoke just simply did too much. Even though it's argued that that didn't make any sense in and of itself because it was alleged that he was coming out of the shower. So what did he have? He was bare bald, like it was nothing. But it just goes to show you when you popping pills and doing demonic deeds, basically, bad things gonna happen. And I think that played a huge part in how this outcome ultimately turned out. You got a developing mind on drugs with a loaded gun and bad indoctrination nonsense in his head. Somebody gonna die. Period. He seen a black man. And you know how we are with us. And he was nervous because he did not want that to be him laid out. So it's shoot first. Even though he in the wrong, he had no business being in there, but it ain't about holding myself accountable. Because I'm willing to do wrong. That's what this is. Essentially, that's the mentality. So if you're going to be unwise in your movements and protecting yourself from the harm that I'm inflicting upon you, then I'm going to further pull the trigger and send you home. And that's exactly what I think happened there. It ain't deeper than that. And for that young man's going to have to pay. This is what it is. But for those who say he ain't remorseful, I read something very different in that kid. Very different. And he just weren't strong enough, wise enough, and ultimately decent enough to express it in a way that disarmed anyone from saying he didn't care or that he was remorseful. Non-remorseful, rather. So that's what I gotta say, man. I wanted to say that. I thought it was important. I meant to make this video a week or so ago, but I guess the time was now, man. I don't wish death on that young fella, but you know, it is what it is, man. He opened the door up for the devil to rob his soul at an early age, like many people do, and it's going to take a lifetime to undo that. It's going to take a lifetime of good deeds to undo that. I do believe in redemption for a lot of people, for a lot of things. But once you take a life, especially in the fashion where you in the wrong, ain't no self-defense because you shouldn't have been in the first place type stuff, it's going to be a tough road to redemption, and you may not make it there. And listening to that young man, I don't know that he learned his lesson, because I think that for which is indoctrinated in his head is probably deeper than the lesson learned from the circumstance. Those influences that made him think he can't apologize for what he did are stronger influences than that of the trauma that was inflicted in that situation, in my opinion. That's the problem. Y'all gotta find a way to reach these kids, man, because you best believe the streets and all the entities are reaching them every hour of every day. So that's pretty much what I gotta say. My name is Bdf 44. I thank y'all for watching, and I'm out.